Welcome back to the second Tricker tutorial. This one is going to cover variables, loops, and storage. The game itself is made up of a scripting language called XS Code. In that, there are several variable types that the game supports. There are more that I'm going to show you, but these are the main ones that you're going to need to know. Let's take a look at them. First one is called a Boolean. A Boolean can take two values of either false or true. The second type is the int. The int is any number that is not a decimal number, i.e. does not have a decimal point. The third version is called a float, which represents floating point, and for all intents and purposes this just means that the number has a decimal point in it, so you're allowed to have partial whole numbers. The fourth type is string. Now string is any text input in the game. Now to note that for the game to tell the difference between whether something is code or if it is text, you surround it by these double quotes. So the example here that I'm typing will be text. Without those quotes, the game would not know that what you've put is text. So if I took these out, this would now become invalid because it would not know what it is. Finally, we have vector. Vector represents a position in three-dimensional space. So you've got the X component, the Y component, and the Z component, which can be set. And you'll see that it is built using this construct with the word vector and then the three values comma separated inside. The values you can substitute for anything you want in those. Now, let's have a look at displaying some of these, or how you would put some of these into other triggers. So let's take the vector example and let's put a value in there. Like so. So I've set the X to 1, the Y to 2, and the Z to 3. Now let's say we want to do a chat. So here is a chat, we'll send it from player 1, and then we'll want to put our variable that we have declared here. Now, as we discussed earlier, we said that text is represented by having quotes around it. And therefore, anything inside the quotes will not be interpreted as code. And that is the case with the chat. So these trigger effects where you're putting in text, you will only see it as text, but we want to see it with the code in there. The way to do that is to put a quote to say that the string ends, and then we want to tag on our variable with our value in, and then put it back into text mode so the game thinks the whole thing is text. So in order to display the vector variable, our variable name is vector variable. So this is what we're going to be putting in. We've got our chat here, which we want to display it. So let's put some message in. Our vector is, and then we want to put our actual variable in. So to do that, we want to put a double quote, and then we use the plus operator to say join this together with the variable. So we'll put our variable in, and then we want to join it with the rest of the text. So I'll just put something like some more text. So the thing we've built in is there's a secret quote hidden, then we've got our text and the quote joined with our variable, and then joined with some more text, and then a implicit quote at the end because this is text. Let's have a look at the results. Here we go. So here is our vector with 1, 2, and 3, and then here is some more text. Similar story with all the other variable types if you want to put them into chats. Other triggers support putting it in as well in place of values. And if you're just putting it in directly as a value, you don't need to put the quotes if it is a non-text value. We'll come across this later. Now, variables that are declared inside of a trigger will just be within that trigger and will not exist outside of it. But why don't we have a way of storing that value and then we can be able to get it out for later? We'll come across this when we are going to look at building a kill counter, which I'll demonstrate later, where we're going to be wanting to hold the number of kills. But let's first explain how the storage works. Storage needs the trigger loader, so let's change this trigger to be the trigger loader instead. There we go. And we'll just call that initialize. And then let's store a variable in our storage. So let's insert a one. First of all, let's create a variable. And let's declare an int variable. So we've got our int variable. Let's call it 123. And let's store it away for future use. And there's an option here. So storage has two ways of using it. You can use the player version or you can just use it directly. The player version allows you to not only give it a name of somewhere to store, but also a player index. This is really useful if you're doing something similar for a lot of players and will come very useful when doing trigger counts. But for now, let's just use the standard storage. So let's store our int inside of the storage. So we give it a name, which is how it finds it out of there. So let's put in my store. And then we want to put our value in, and our value is this current int variable. So let's put the variable in there in its place. So this is an example of where we have put a variable directly in place of a value. This is not normal text because it's taking a number, so we don't need to put the quotes. Now then, let's grab it out in another trigger. So let's just call this store. And this trigger will be running afterwards, but let's just put a timer on to represent that it's been done at a later time. So let's put it a timer of 1 second. And we're going to want to get it out of the storage again and display it. So let's get our int out. So the store variable was my store, and we are storing our variable. So when we get it, we're going to need to get it out as that. So let's get the int, and here you have a couple of options for storage. You can either set an existing variable or we can do it to a new variable. Let's call it a new variable because we don't have one. And we've got to give the same name, so it'll be my store. And we want to provide the variable we're going to put the value into. Let's call it found. You'll see that there is an option for default value. What this means is it's the value that you will get if the value was not found. So if you try to get a value out of storage and there was nothing in under that name, then this will be the value you get instead. So we'll leave that as 0. Finally, there's an option if you want to remove from storage when you get it out, but we'll leave that off. Now that we've put our variable in store, let's copy that and then let's put it into a chat like we did before and send it. So as before, we need to get out of the string, put our variable in, which is found, and put the quotes back in. Let's put some text in front of it. Found value. And let's play test and see if it works. There we go. I found the value of 123, which we put in one trigger, and we got it out in another trigger. Now, let's move on to loops. when making triggers, you will probably know and come across the absolute annoyance that you have to do the same thing for every single player, and that is incredibly tedious. What if there's a way that we only have to write something once and it will occur for all players? Let's create a fresh scenario and let's put multiple players. So let's give it 4 players for now. And now we want to do the same thing for all 4 of the players. So let's see an example. We want to give our units a ton of health so that they will not die easily when they're in combat. So let's put some antibites down as player 1, player 2, player 3, and player 4. Now, let's go and give them a ton of health. So ordinarily, you would do modify data, and then you would put your anibite in. Oops. And then you'd say player 1, and then you'd say hit points and the amount. And then you'd have to copy and paste that for every player. And then you would have to do that for every single attribute in there, which gets very quickly annoying. So instead, what if we had a system for simply applying whatever we've got, but for every player that we want? For this, we can use the for loop system. The for loop allows you to apply all the effects below the start of it for a given player, and then end. When an end is put in, it stops it. So here we're going to put a for loop with a start player, and you'll see that on the trigger name there is a brace. The reason for that is to mark that this trigger needs an end. If you do not put an end and try to playtest the game, you will find that it will throw an error because the braces don't line up. And in here, you can see that it is made up of several parts. The first thing is a variable name. So this is a variable that will be declared and will hold the player of the effects that below. And this is what we can use to specify which player the effect should apply to. Below that, we've then got a counter where it has a start and an end. And what will happen is it will count from start to end, and it will continue doing so until the comparison is no longer satisfied. So in this case, it will count from 1 to 4, and as long as the current value is less than the end value, or equal to, it will continue. And then we have an increment of 1. Now then, let's put in the modify data. Modify data. Now, ordinarily, so not modified data, sorry, it's protein modify data, isn't it? Let's just sort that out. Now, ordinarily, this will be the version you use, but the problem here is that the player number is a drop down, which is no good. We need it so that we can type it in, so we can put our variable. For this, we have the different versions of the triggers, which I covered in the first video. In this case, we want the relaxed version. And what the relaxed version does is it allows us to type in more freely into numerical fields, such as the player. So in this case, we want to put our variable p in for the player number. So let's put p in. And I've said player modified data instead of protein unit modified data. Let's sort that out. Modify data relaxed. There we go. Right, so we want to say for anibite, we've got our player, which we're going to put our variable p in. We want to set the hit points, and let's say 10,000. And we will assign the hit points. Now, as mentioned, we must end the for loop, even if we have no effects following it. Every single start must have an end. So let's sort that out. So for that, there is an end, for loop end, and now we have our loop. So it's going to use a variable p going from 1 to 4. With that, we're going to modify the anybytes of player p, which is on the loop, to have the hit points of 10,000. Let's give this a run and see if it works. Okay, so I've got 10,000, and all of the other anybytes have 10,000. Cool. There are a few other loop options which I can quickly go over. So not just for players. We also have one that works over a for bid, so for all units. So let's have a look at that. For loop start all units. And what this does is for every single unit on the game, this will go through it. A lot of triggers now, what takes a proto unit, will end up allowing you to put unit types instead of a specific unit. It allows you to cover it. But not all triggers allow you to do this. An example is the forbid one, where the forbid proto unit doesn't allow you to specify a general unit type. And one very useful thing you can do is you can forbid for all units. So let's put some villagers down, some Greek ones, which I've got plenty of buildings that are going to have. And we want to prevent them from building it. Forbidding should allow that, but we could even do a step better and actually remove from the UI of the villager the object, so we don't even get to see that they could have built it. So let's go and do both of those. So forbid and disable. And for this, we're going to need to put in wanted it for both the players really, and we're going to want to do the be able to freely set what the unit is. So for that, we need the free proto version, and we want it relaxed. So for now, we're going to put it as player 1, since we'll do player 1 first, and we want it to forbid all the units. So our variable here is called proto unit. So that is what we're going to put in. Now, similar to, as I was discussing before with chatting, this is one where it takes text, which means that there are quotes around that you can't see. So in order to use a variable, we do have to get rid of those, go out of text mode into variable mode. So we need to put the quote and then the plus. We can put our variable, and then we put the quote and plus to go back into text mode. And this will put the variable in. And after that, let's do a remove train to actually remove it from the UI. So again, we'll do the free proto relaxed, and for that we want to remove from the villager, and it is villager Greek, I think. The one negative of typing, of course, is the fact that you have to remember what the units are called. If I leave it, actually, the units don't have a space in their name, so take that out. We'll leave that as player 1, and then here we want to do the same thing. So we want it for all units. Let's give that a check, and we will then end the for loop. There. So we've got our variable. It'll go over every single proto unit in the game. We're going to forbid that unit, and we're going to disable the ability to train it on the Greek villager. Let's give that a go. There we go.
Έτοιμη.
And there you can see that the UI is completely
Λέγε
blank
πρόσταγμα.
for that villager. Now, obviously we want to really do it for all players automatically. And we want to go through every single unit. For this, we can actually nest 2 loops together and have a double loop. And what this will allow us to do is to go through all units and do it for all players. And for that, we declare the loops inside of each other. So if I insert another for loop, we can now do for each player. Start player. And let's push this up. So we're going to go through all units, and then for each unit, we're then going to go through all players. So we've only got 2 players at the moment, so let's just put 2 in. And then we got a variable p. So for here, we want to put p as the player now. We want to put p here. And then we also want to end that loop. And the way loops end is the inner loop is always the one that's ended. So if you've got 2 loops and you put an end in, the one that is most recent will be the one that's ended. So this end here will end the start player 1, and then this end will end the all units one. Let's give that a go and see what happens. And we will play as player 2 to prove that both players are being covered.
Λέγε.
There we go. The AI is kicking in and moving the villagers. But you can see that the UI is now completely empty as well for player 2. And obviously this can extend to any number of players. So finally, let's combine a few things together and build ourselves a system of counting kills and granting gold for those kills. So let's create ourselves a new map, and let's have 4 players on it. And we're going to build a kill counter that will automatically work for all players involved, which would be fantastic. So let's just create ourselves a quick little arena. We'll have 3 different players, and we'll have them battling over some units in the middle area. So we'll draw ourselves a 3-pronged arena. Like so. Oops. Let's expand that out. There we go. Sure, why not throw some forest in just for a little bit of touch up. And some loose ones. Terrible arena design, but we're only doing an example here. Right. Let's make ourselves super overpowered, because why not? So let's give ourselves an Osiris. Woohoo! Let's give player 2 an Osiris as well. And player 3 one. And then player 4 is going to be our little unit kills factory. Let's just give them some measly militia that they can squabble and fight over. Okay, now that we have built the arena, let's have a look at coding up the kill counter. Let's head to the triggers. First of all, we're going to be making use of storage, which requires a trigger loader. So we need to put the trigger loader in. So insert a new trigger and call it initialize. And then we'll insert the trigger loader. That's our trigger loader sorted out. Now, let's do the kills for each player. Now, coding a kill counter for each player would be very boring and tedious. So, why not instead make use of the fact that we can do loops? So let's do grant gold for kills. Oops. and we'll make this a looping trigger so it runs all the time. For conditions, we don't really need a condition because what we're going to do is grant the gold equal to the difference of the number of kills the player had last time this was run and the current time. This is where the storage is going to come in useful, because in the storage we're going to record what the previous number of kills are so that we can compare the new number of kills versus the old number of kills and grant gold equal to the difference. Now, we go into the trigger effect. So the first thing we want to do is to loop over all players. So we'll insert the for loop and we'll go for all players. So in this case, there's only 3 players we're interested in. So let's do from 1 to 3. Next, we want to declare a variable equal to what the last number of kills was, which we're going to want to get out of storage. Now each player is going to have their own kill counter, but storage has an option to get and set based on a player. So let's make use of that. So for that, we want to use the player version and we want to get the int and declare it into a new variable. So let's select that. And let's just call the storage kill storage. Oops, I can't type. And for player, we want it to be variable p because we're going over each player. And let's call this last kills because this is what we had previously. And defaulting to 0 would be a great idea because effectively, if we've not ever recorded anything, we want to say that they haven't got any kills, which makes a lot of sense. Now that we've got the previous kills, we want to grab what the current kills are out of the statistics. So let's go and grab that. So it'll be variable, and there will be variable int, and we want to do player statistic values, and we want the relaxed version on there. And let's call this one current kills. And we want to put the player to be player P, and we want the to be enemy units killed. I can find it. That's kill cost. Enemy units killed. There we go. So we've got our kills that we got from last time, which is last kills, and then we've got our current one, which are current kills. So what we really want now is for the difference to be what we get. So we want to declare a new variable, and we want to declare a new int, and let's call this difference. And we're going to set that to be the current kills minus the last kills. There we go. And that will give us the value of how much has changed. Next, we want to grant the resources based on the difference to the player. So let's go ahead and do that and use the relaxed version for player P, and we'll grant 1 gold for a kill because we're stingy. And finally, we need to record back in storage what the current kills count is in order so that the next time this runs, we get the new value. So we're going to be storing that in our kills storage. So let's do that. And we want to set, and we want the player version. So we're going to store in our kill storage. We want player P, and we want to store the current kills because that's what we have set it to. So let's do that. Finally, we need to end the loop so that the braces match up. And there we go. So we get our last kills out of storage, We get our current kills. We take the difference. We want to grant gold equal to the difference, which I've put 1, so let's sort that out. Because what I said was only granting 1 gold per kill, which is fine. That's what we're planning to do. But the issue is we haven't said that it's the difference in number of kills. This will execute once, but we could have had multiple kills. So that actually should be difference, not 1. If we wanted to grant multiple gold per kill, we would say difference times and then the amount that we would want. But here we just want the difference. We then put back into the kill storage what the current kills are, ready for our next time, and then we end the loop. Let's give this a go and see if it works. Okay, let's see if this works. Militia are running away. Let's go and get them. Go and kill 4 units, and we got ourselves 4 gold. Another 4 bites of dust. Another 4 gold for us. There we go. Now let's try a completely different player and see if it works for them as well. So let's go do that. Let's try as player 3. And hopefully we will have another set of kills and another set of gold for us. If we can get them. They really don't like hanging around us. Can't blame them though. Oh, my AI is kicking in and moving the Osiris away. Come over here, you silly guy. There we go. We're getting the kills just like with player 1. And there you have it. Hopefully, you can see that the 4 loops allows us to do triggers once for each, and it will work for all players. We went through storage, which allows you to get and set values either per player or just globally generally. And finally, we covered variable types in order to get some understanding of how they work and interact. Hope this tutorial has been useful, and we'll hopefully see you for the next one.